Okay, welcome back from lunch that was kindly cooked by Eldridge Capital Management, formerly Stonebriar Capital. Thanks so much for joining us. Just a few notes. If you want to interact with people, please download the app. All slides and presentations are available on there. I think photos are going up on Flickr if you want to demonstrate to your boss that you've been working and have been at the conference. We're now going to, we've talked a lot about large aircraft, but I think everyone will agree that's a boring market and not where the real activity is. So we're going to now look at innovation. And we're absolutely delighted to have Lannie from Textron Aviation, Dan Lind from Garmin, and Jimmy Beeson from Textron Aviation. Lannie, do you want to comment on how boring large jets are quickly?
No, it was a really great morning session, but we're also excited, over the next 30 minutes here to kind of show you what's happening in the light, mid, and super mid segment as it relates to Textron Aviation.
And your job is selling aircraft?
Yeah, so I'm Senior Vice President of Global Sales and Flight Operations for Textron Aviation, so have responsibility for selling all of our commercial products, including the Learn to Fly Skyhawk all the way to our flagship, the Longitude.
And we're going to talk about innovation in business aviation. How does that impact on you?
So innovation is really key for Textron Aviation. It's key for the entire industry. You got to stay relevant. And at Textron Aviation, we do a really good job at listening to our customers. We're going to talk a little bit about our customer advisory board process, but how we innovate and bring products to the market that our customers are looking for. Just looking back at last year at NBAA, we were able to launch the Gen 3 version for our CJ series, which is the M2, CJ3, and CJ4. And we were able to bring the technology it's out there with some OEMs, but we were able to bring the Autoland feature to our owner-flown segment, which was a huge, the customers are asking for that, and we were able to collect that information and make it happen. And the other thing we announced at NBAA last year was on the CJ4, we introduced the G3000 Prime, and we were the first OEM to announce that with Garmin.
Dan, Dan, do you want to quickly take us through the Autoland story? I'm sure lots of people in the room have seen it. Some may have gone through it, but do you want to just take us through it a little?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, thankfully, no one's been through an Autoland at this point. And for those that don't know, Garmin's Autoland system is an emergency system only. So in the scenario where there's, say, an incapacitation, the aircraft can automatically or manually be activated to autonomously take over, find the best runway, and land the aircraft. And so, honestly, it's a pretty awesome story if you think about it. So I've been at Garmin 16 years. I started in 2008. Around 2011 timeframe, our leadership at the time was looking back, and anytime there's an unfortunate event, you say, what can we do? And so, we knew the technology was there and that was possible, and we could do what eventually became Garmin Autoland. And what's pretty unique at the time, if you think about it, 2011, Garmin wasn't flying in mini jets at all. And, our G3000 didn't exist. We didn't have the majority of the technologies that are even needed for Autoland. But we knew we could do it, and we basically set off to go do it. And it was probably, 2 years later, we had it defined. We said, this is how it's supposed to work. And we put existing actuators on a throttle. We put a braking system in, and we went and flew an airplane and figured it out. And we had our database team put in an airport basically at 5,000 feet. And we practiced hundreds of landings in order to get it down and figure out how this system would work. And then it was probably, it was around February 2016 where we did our first autonomous landing at our home airport in New Century, Kansas. So it was great. It was exciting. We proved the technology can work, but then that was just the beginning, right? Because you actually have to go certify it and figure out how to put it in airplanes. So at that point, we had been talking to aircraft OEMs, Textron Aviation and others included, saying, hey guys, it's real, we can do this. But, for anyone else to go invest in it as much as we did, they'd have to go spend millions of dollars to go certify and take that risk, when really it wasn't proven whether or not we could bring it to market. So, but we were working with the FAA, we were working with the EASA, just kept marching forward saying this is something we think we can actually certify and do. And one of the more unique things is we actually had to go work with air traffic control. It was the first time we've ever certified anything that involved air traffic control. And, they feel very strongly about autonomous airplanes flying through their airspace and how you navigate them and what they say over the frequency. But they were all for it, to be honest. I mean, if you think about what they go through in an emergency and knowing that this system would not only help the people on board, but them as well at ATC, they were incredibly supportive of the technology. So anyways, it ended up certifying in May of 2020. So think about that date and what we were all going through, as a world. We were able to keep moving forward with the FAA at the time and actually get it certified. And then, about a year later, we were awarded the Robert J. Collier Trophy, Super Bowl of Aviation, joined our friends in Textron Aviation and others in that wonderful honor. And now we're excited for it to be on the Gen 3 series of aircraft.
Do you know roughly what the split was between R&D on designing it and making it and the cost of certifying it?
Probably the easiest answer to that is we will never make our money back on it. But in the grand scheme of things, Lannie mentioned it. Customers want it, so indirectly, it'll sell airplanes. We have a retrofit STC out there that it'll continue to sell and do great. But it's also one of those things. Go back to the whole reason why we did it. You can make a difference with the technology, and for us not to do it would almost be wrong.
And so, how do you decide where to innovate? So that's a really beautiful case where it's a clear.
Yeah, there's kind of the extreme example like that. Again, it's an incredible investment over a long period of time. But as a company, we talked about watches, right? We're pretty broad company in the amount of technologies we come out with. Most of the time, when we go to make a product, we have to answer one question, which is why Garmin? Why is that? It has to be different. You don't just innovate for innovation's sake, right? And Garmin Autoland was a great example from a differentiator and that sort of thing. Other than that, these guys talk about it great on just being able to listen to your customers. But a lot of the time, we get direct feedback from end users, but the aircraft OEMs are our primary customer. They're all trying to be competitive and drive us to be competitive. We sit in weekly roadmap meetings, and they can become pretty heated exchanges about what's the right things to bring to the market for what products. And for me personally, I have to represent these guys and what they want to bring to their customers. So anyways, it's typically a nice exchange there internally. But if you say, hey, what usually rises to the top, it's always going to be automation and safety. If you think about how complex these aircraft are, and a lot of them are operated single pilot, they're always looking for additional safety and automation to help them in the cockpit.
And I think that's the key, right, is when to innovate is a broad question, but it's really when the technology is ready, when your customer is ready. So it's working with your partners to continue to, mature those technologies and those feature sets that really optimize flight operations. And when that technology is ready and the customer's ready to take you there, you walk hand in hand across that finish line.
Yeah, exactly.
So Jimmy, you do a lot of talking with customers.
Yeah.
You run the customer advisory boards. How do you, with something like Autoland, I'm guessing they started asking for it and it was available, but presumably no one was asking for it before it became public.
Yeah, but and that's the delicate dance you play in these customer advisory boards, right? Is it's not necessarily the exact feature that customer is asking for. They may not be asking for it by name, but you get these in-depth conversations with them, and that's really the secret behind the success of these cabs, as we call them, is it's a process that's been intricately developed over time that vets all that out. So you may not be asking, or the customer may not be asking for a particular feature, but what they're expressing is a need. And so innovation is trying to find uncommon ways for common needs or common problems, right? So you listen to the needs, you vet those out through the customer process or the customer feedback loop, and then you go develop that technology to meet that need or solve that problem, either by yourself or by partnering with great partners such as Garmin to fill that space.
Part of that is, really nothing's off the table. So when we do these feedback sessions from our customers, we're listening to everything, and part of our job is to really look at it and scope it, and also, looking at our resources that we have available to make sure that we can, bring something to the market very quickly. And, that's what we're doing with the Gen 3s. And also to mention, this year we're going to be bringing 4 improved aircraft to the market, which is the M2 Gen 2, the CJ3 Gen 2. We're bringing the Latitude with a software upgrade, and we're also bringing the Ascend to market this year, which most of you probably know 2 years ago, we launched the Ascend at eBase. It was a great platform for us. The platform does very well in Europe, and we've had a lot of success since we launched that product.
And I think last thing I'll say about the win is the win to innovate. I think from our perspective, and I think these gentlemen would agree with me, is not until you can exceed customer expectations. It's not about meeting expectations, it's about exceeding. And I think for me, where that rings true is the G3000 Prime suite that we were able to announce on the CJ4. Really, customers were driving us in that direction with the CJ4. But I think they assumed it would be a drop-in replacement of your, call it legacy G3000 system, but everything was leading us in this new way. It was all about simplification of flight operations and making flight more efficient. And really, that's what steers you in the way, like a system like G3000 Prime that's just very intuitive. It's an all-new user interface that our pilots can now interact with that really doesn't compare.
You've got a very diverse customer base. We were joking about the large aircraft, but they tend to either be operated by an aircraft management company or by a corporate flight department. But you guys have aircraft management companies, corporate flight departments, but you also have a lot of owner pilots. Are they more excited by the customer advisory board process?
Oh, absolutely. And when we do these advisory boards, it's not just the owner that we bring in. If they're an owner pilot, they're obviously very concerned about what we do in the cockpit. But we also bring the spouse, and we listen about what would you like to see in the cabin, or we bring the mechanic to see how we can make the airplane more reliable, to keep the airplane in service longer, reduce costs. So it is all over the ownership piece, who we try to bring in and listen to. And when we're doing these cabs, we're also looking at fractional customers to come in, and they operate the airplane differently than flying at 200 hours a year, and what's important to them. And when we get the engineering team listening and we give them direction, we want to make sure we capture everyone.
And we've got a nice audience question. Have you had any surprising requests from a customer advisory board that have made it into production?
Surprising request.
I think by the time they make it to production, they're not so surprising anymore. I think what surprising, maybe going back to your last question about the variations we have in our customer base, maybe what's been most surprising is how passionate the customers can get about specific topics. So I go back to the CJ3 Gen 2 and the development of that project. Cockpit space was something that was rising to the top. Legroom in the cockpit was a topic that was rising to the top in our conversations. And, knowing what the cockpit of a CJ feels like, you would think, a couple inches, that's fairly significant. If I can get you a couple inches in the cockpit, that's great, right? Well, you then propose that to the customer advisory board, and they say, no, not near enough. And so now, if you're watching the news feed, you know that we got 4.5 inches of additional legroom in the cockpit of the CJ3 Gen 2. And that would not have happened without those very passionate conversations on legroom, which seemingly it might seem a little bit nichey of a request, but became a common point of conversation.
Or that Jim Seagrave, when you announced the
Yeah.
launch, was like, I wish you wouldn't tell anyone about that because the passengers in the back think they've lost 4 inches.
Yeah.
So you can't win. He was like, and how else are you trying to innovate the customer experience?
It's more than just the airplane, but we look at it as the whole life cycle. And so we're looking at innovation around service, around parts distribution. There's ways we try to speed. We just expanded 180,000 square feet into our existing parts warehouse in Wichita, which that improves and expedites parts, to our customers when they go AOG. We're looking at, the aftermarket and tech pubs and, things that we can do. You mentioned AI earlier. We're also looking at that, and we have what's called TAMI, which is in our aftermarket service shops, which is Textron Aviation Maintenance Intelligence. And so what we're using that for, and we've been using it almost a year now, is for our technicians to increase the productivity of the aircraft in the service shop. So by using this system that we developed, they can actually use the AI portion of that to quickly troubleshoot and determine what that solution is for that maintenance event, and it pulls all the documents to them immediately. So that's something that around innovation that we're looking at, and now we're going to try to look at other areas of the business and manufacturing. We can take it as well.
So I think you said the word experience. It's all an experience. It's all contributory to the customer experience. So we don't look at it as just merely the aircraft transaction, selling you a new airplane. It's not our job, it's not our role in this process to lay a bunch of ground rules in place to limit the type of feedback we get and where we innovate. It's service, it's parts. To Lannie's point, is we're looking at it as an innovative way to approach aircraft ownership and improve that overall customer experience.
Dan, what are you working on at the moment?
Yeah, wish I could share everything we're working on, but
It's a friendly audience.
it's a friendly environment, I know. But at the same time, if we would have told everybody about Autoland 10 years ago, then we would have been a little too early on that one. I think for the most part, even with the announcements Lannie talked about, we have a lot on our plate. A lot of what we have to do now is go execute. But as we look at our roadmap, I mentioned it. The majority of what we're working on is safety, it's automation. If you look at the G3000 Prime, that's kind of the whole focus of it. You look at runway occupancy awareness and Surf-IA technology for the runway environment and the number of incidents that are going on there. Developing an automatic auto mode weather radar to, for pilots that honestly don't know how to use it. A lot of the things we're trying to do is just take the complexity out of these airplanes and just make it easier, make it safer for them to use it.
It's a nice audience question saying, do you have to, I'm guessing it's written by a lawyer because it uses the word arbitrate. How often do you get a customer who's really, really passionate about something that you're never going to deliver? And, how often do you get one who just keeps coming back and raising the same issue in every customer advisory board that no one else cares about?
It happens, but I think that's where I see success, is that they feel like they have been integrated into the team, really, because that's what we're trying to create, is a team where they feel like they can bring back those points that they're passionate about, because they're passionate about aircraft, we're passionate about those same aircraft, and we all want to improve them. So I'd say it's not infrequent, but I also feel like that shows me that we've established that trust in our customer base, and they bring it back because they know we'll do something about it. I also think the more they get involved in this process, the more they understand the challenges that we face as an OEM, and they understand that, they start to see the ebbs and flows of the industry, the market, what really matters to them. I think this is what sheds some light on that. And they see the trade-offs that have to be made in a product development situation. So I just think it creates a better sense of understanding, a better appreciation for what it takes to bring a product to market. and results in better overall, that experience that I was talking about, and better overall satisfaction.
I would say, what's driving a lot is just the technology and how fast it's coming at us. We talked about the connectivity earlier. That's very important to them. And the technology that they're seeing in their automotive, their cars, their yachts, their homes, they want to be able to see that, in the aircraft that they get in and either fly in the cockpit or the cabin.
That's a fact, and that's how you wind up with things like wireless charging. We were one of the industry's first to put wireless charging on our small jets. So now the two light jets and the Ascend now have wireless charging on it, and it comes out of conversations like that.
Which can be a big thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you notice that if someone's in a customer advisory board, they're more likely to stay loyal? And I know all OEMs have a very high loyalty rate, but...
Yeah, we have very loyal customers, but they... when they get involved and you can watch videos where there's a lot of testimonials of our customers saying that we listen and we take action, and this isn't leadership sitting around the table with these customers. This is the engineers listening and writing every detail of what they're saying and what they're looking for in our product, and then to see us take that and roll it out into a product improvement. We have customers sending us email and calling us wanting to get on the next advisory board. So yes, there's a lot of loyalty.
Dan, there's a nice one for you. Would you get into an innovation project that has a high probability of failure, but could give you experience in fields you could apply elsewhere?
I think the easy answer is yes. I mean, the Autoland is a great one. There was zero path on how to get there, and we 100% did it. There's a number of projects we have been working on for many years that I could honestly tell you I don't know if they'll ever see the market. Really hope they do. But to be honest with you, when your competitors are, we're maybe an $800 million company from an aviation standpoint. Your competitors are $50 billion. You have to take those risks. You have to take chances. And so, yeah, 100% we do that. Unfortunately, way too often.
And same for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, I just echo what Dan said is, to truly innovate, you have to be fearless. So understanding there might be some headwinds in the projects you take on, but there's always a means to an end. And I guess we don't look at it as a high degree of failure. We look at it as a timeline. And maybe it's a not now or a not yet. The technology or the feature hasn't evolved or hasn't progressed to the point that it's ready, but it's all a step in the process to get us there eventually.
And you got to keep your pulse on all the regulatory requirements throughout the world, because as soon as we bring a new product to market, like the CJ3 Gen 2, we have to go certify it, in every region of the world where we sell it. So there's a lot we have to focus on.
Historically, Textron has always been really good at getting certification done. Are you finding it harder now, or?
There's a little bit more challenging, throughout the world. But that's something we're kind of working on globally to make that a better process for not just us, but the entire industry.
And we've also got another great audience question about personalization. How much is this? Is this becoming more, and are people looking for unique aircraft?
Yes, and that's something we specialize. We actually, when we sell the aircraft, we host the customer in Wichita at our headquarters, and we take them through the experience of allowing them to pick their fabrics, pick the wood, look at customization in the galley if they have something unique that they require. So it's a process that we've used for decades, and it works very well, and our customers really like it.
Okay, we're getting lots. Here's a nice question. If you put your name on the question, you get priority. Yeah. So Franco has asked, would Textron consider incorporating Autoland into larger aircraft?
I wouldn't say never, but the Autoland feature is really directed for single pilot operations. I mean, in all the Part 25 aircraft, we're flying 2 crew. It's something we might look at, but the success that we're seeing in the owner flown or single pilot aircraft it's that assurance that if something does happen to the pilot, there's a button you can push and you can safely take the aircraft to the ground.
You've been in at least one flight where someone's pushed the button, haven't you?
Yeah.
Not because something happened, but it was planned, wasn't it?
Dan's been in more.
How many have you done, Dan?
Like how many Autoland? Yeah, so I'll put it this way. In order to actually do it, the airplane has to be experimental market survey in order to actually go through the Autoland. And it's a cool experience because you kind of know what's going on, but also think about it from like being in the airplane and there's always a safety pilot in the left seat when we're doing these. It is the most uneventful thing ever, but it's supposed to be, right? It's supposed to be a nice, smooth landing that lands in the middle of the runway. And so it's one of those things where you have to pay attention and watch the auto throttle move, without anybody touching it. And the pilot's over there with just his hands on his lap. And so honestly, it's very uneventful, but it's supposed to be that way. But it's a neat experience.
What happens if a pilot presses the button? You're only allowed to use it in an emergency. So
Yep,
if you're
correct.
a lazy pilot, you can't just go.
Yeah.
What happens if someone presses it?
Yeah, so if someone pushes the button, there's a delay of about 10 seconds, and it's going to tell you what's going to go on. And so basically you just hit the autopilot disconnect, turn it off. Otherwise, after 10 seconds, it's going to come on and say emergency autoland is activated. It starts talking a lot, throwing up all the warnings in the screens, and then it's game time.
But if you found a pilot who did it to show off, what's the penalty?
It declares an emergency. So, you're going to have lots of phone calls and paperwork to fill out and all that fun stuff.
So
And a few fire trucks on the runway.
Yeah, a few fire trucks, yeah.
so you have to at least fake a heart attack.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Just the record, no one on stage agreed to that. That was really... Sticking with this, another audience question, to what extent will increased automation and autonomous operations feature in the flight decks of the 2030s? I think the person asking this question is, I'm guessing it's an aircraft manager who wants to get rid of pilots. Will we have pilots in the 2030s?
I'll give you my perspective. Garmin's full of pilots, aircraft owners, very passionate about the industry. Sorry, but we won't be the ones that do that. I think our perspective is we'll continue to build safety around the pilot and protect them and the passengers in the back. Things will get easier, be more automated, especially with how much we want these aircraft to perform and do. But in general, we're here to support the pilots more than anything.
I echo Dan's sentiment. I'm a big pro-pilot guy, so we continue, especially being that owner-operator segment that we operate heavily in, our innovations focus around supporting that pilot. So
I think the overall goal is just to reduce pilot workload
yep.
Through the whole process.
And you see, another good question, you see a wider adoption of technology for detection of runway incursions or...
Yeah.
What inspires you about the future of aircraft development?
I think very generally that our customers inspire me. That's my job to let them inspire me and my crew that go and do this for a living. But just how our customers in the market continue to evolve and they continue to identify new paths for us to innovate and make our products even better so that we can keep doing what we love to do for years to come.
I would also say, there's obviously competitive OEMs in this space, and I think all of this just continues to make all of us better.
Yep.
And trying to drive that product that our customers want, and in the overall market, it just makes it stronger.
Dan, I think you've been thrown this one. What about avionics focused on the absolute joy of flying?
Yeah, this is a good question. And again, Autoland's really only used in an emergency, but a lot of what we do, you make really cool, fun stuff. And again, we got a bunch of passionate people internally, trying to drive a roadmap and bring these products to market. But the focus is making it fun. And Garmin, we came up from the bottom. So if you think, and we're still pretty heavily prevalent there when it comes from a training standpoint. And so, you want people to get in aviation, learn to fly, and enjoy it so that they stay in it. And, we can help with all the pilot problems and everything else that we have. And so making it fun is super important. And again, we're all very passionate about that.
And I'll say from a firsthand experience, announcing G3000 Prime along with Garmin at NBAA and being able to spend the week interacting with customers and walking them through the system, I've never seen so many grown people giggle. So it was a lot of fun, and it showed on their faces, and just the ease by which they can now control the aircraft is something that makes it fun, because now they can concentrate on doing what they love to do, which is aviate.
But it allows us to keep that same platform from, coming into a light jet, an M2 to a CJ3 to a CJ4, and having that G3000 platform is important to us. And some parts of the world, having the common type rating is important, and now having the same cockpit.
Yep.
In a previous discussion, another audience question, it was noted that some aircraft owners think that business aviation is a little bit archaic. Would you agree with this when you're meeting, or do you think this is fair?
I don't know that I agree with it being a little bit archaic. I think that's why we're so motivated to keep it fresh and keep it going, and to do that. That's the best way we can do it, is by continuing to listen, continuing to innovate, establishing a frequent cadence of aircraft updates. You've seen us, roll out multiple iterations of jets and turbine aircraft and piston aircraft over the last several years. So staying on that cadence, keeping it fresh, continuing to innovate, I think, is what fights against that.
But we were talking about new aircraft, but there's what, Garmin and others are working on, is creating a platform for an STC, and, being able to take a CJ2, that may be 15 years old and put a glass cockpit into it. It's very important. So obviously we like to see the new innovation, but I think there's a lot that's opening up on the aftermarket side. And I think a lot of OEMs and MROs are looking at that business to kind of grow by replacing the cockpit and, putting new interiors in and new paint.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the finances in the room like that. Yeah. They like it when you do upgrades. Okay, really quickly, for Textron, anything new on the turboprop-powered aircraft side? Would you like to announce a new aircraft now?
I wish. So obviously on the turboprop side, the Beechcraft Denali is doing very well for us. We have over 2,000 hours, 1,200 flights. We have 3 aircraft flying. GE Catalyst engines doing great. We think it should be certifying soon with GE. Then we'll follow with certification of this aircraft. It's hitting all of the targets that we set out to do. We were looking for a more fuel-efficient engine. It's doing it. So we talk about reduced emissions. Those are things that Textron Aviation is doing, as well as trying to, as we look at a new program, what can we do to make it more efficient? And we're doing it with the Denali, and we're super excited about the aircraft.
And what's your view on Europe for the next 5 years?
We're going to continue to invest here. We got a great sales team. We're bringing new products that we feel that the European market's looking for. The Denali, the Ascend, of course, all the CJs, very popular in the charter market as well. So we're going to continue to focus on this market and invest and bring new products to market.
And Dan, what do you see as the next big opportunity for Garmin?
I kind of go back to, we got a lot on our plate right now, not even just with Textron Aviation, but, lots of others in the market. So we've made our commitments, and just, honestly, we need to deliver at this point.
Brilliant. Any more audience questions? Any old school questions? If not, thank you so much, guys. That was great.
Yeah, thank you.